I'd like to make a few remarks before we begin today. First, I'd like to thank this rather unorthodox committee that's been appointed. We have not met officially, but I would like to recognize my fellow committee members. Representative Chisholm.
Glad to be here, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Turner.
Oh, am I on it? Thank you.
You're on it.
Yeah.
Representative Ruth Jones McClendon, who I don't think is here right now, and my classmate, Representative Susan King. When we began this, Chairman Pitts asked us to focus on the present budget. We've spent an awful lot of time over the last few months talking about the coming budget, but there are issues involving deficiencies in the present budget that we'll be talking about today, and those are the focus of our committee. And I would like to encourage the members, to the degree possible, if we can, let's try to remember that we're talking about the present budget, not the budget that we've all been working on for several weeks, looking forward into the coming budget. And with that, I'd like to say just a few remarks about the spending reductions that have already taken place. Before we talk about HB 4 and HB 275, I think we need to look at where we've come from. The message of November the 2nd, I personally believe, was clear. The state of Texas said we can't keep spending the amount of money we're spending. We'll have to do some cuts. And I believe that message was that we need to do it within our current revenue stream. And in fact, we have been doing that in the forward-looking budget for a month now, more than a month. But as we look back, we have to think that we passed the budget that spent $182 billion in all funds last session and authorized $80.6 billion in general revenue. And that was already a cut of $1 billion from the previous biennium. We were barely out of here. We were just barely gone, when in fact everybody began to see that we were heading over the cliff into a fairly significant recession. In fact, my first outing after the last biennium, when you go home and make all your speeches to your Kiwanis and Rotary clubs, my first speech, I said we would be $17 billion short. I was wrong. We were farther than that. Because in June of 2009, the sale tax dropped 11.1% from the previous year. It kept getting worse through July and August, and month after month it kept going downhill. We all know that. It finally got to 14.4% in November. It finally began to turn around a little bit and wasn't quite as bad, but we were comparing a really bad month to a month that was still bad but not as bad, so it looked a little better. So what did our leadership start to do? We started the process of cutting the budget. In January, the governor and the speaker and the lieutenant governor sent out that glorious 5% cut message that all the agencies were so anxious to hear about, that you've got to cut 5% of your budget. It's painful. I've been on some of those boards that received those letters. It hurts. In May, they were told that what their final reduction targets were, and in May, the speaker made that unusual visit to this room, to this committee, and most of us on this committee were here when he said that it was, as he said, the first dose of reality of how bad the budget was going to be. I've got several quotes here from the speaker when that happened. His quote was, and some of you that are new to the committee didn't hear this, "I want the members of this committee, the leaders of our state agencies and our state employees and our citizens to understand that we cannot afford business as usual, that we're going to have to make significant cuts, and the 5% that we just requested was just the beginning. it was absolutely necessary, but not nearly sufficient. In May, the LBB and the governor's office sent out their letter, said prepare your LARs, agencies. And they were told in that letter that not only were those cuts going to stand that had already been identified, but there was going to be another 10% on top of the already 5% cut. Then we came to November. LBB had to adopt the constitutional spending limit for the 12-13 budget. At that meeting, I'm going to quote the speaker again, given our current fiscal situation and the outlook for 2012-13, I think it's safe to say these reductions aren't enough. Every state agency needs to know we will be cutting beyond what they originally submitted on those first 5% plans. And I think it's safe to say people should expect there may be reductions in the next appropriations bill that go beyond the 10% cuts agencies submitted in their LARs. He went on to say that we need to be clear about this. The cuts we're talking about are real. They will be taken in the supplemental appropriations bill next session. That brings us to today's topic. And there will be further significant reductions in the next budget. We have before us today House Bill 4. House Bill 4 is a fairly large bill that lists many pages of cuts. The cutting was still not done. And in December, the governor, the speaker, the lieutenant governor ordered that other 2.5% cut. They affect FY11 only. And you need to realize that when you cut percentages with a shorter time to work, that the workout of that cut has less time to have effect on the budget and is therefore much more significant to the operations of the agencies. In mid-December, when that letter went out, we were already 3.5 months into the fiscal year, and today we're 6.5 months into our fiscal year. The question arises about how we will find more than $3 billion in additional cuts to cover our shortfall. We must ask the question, how much spending, where, what's already been cut, how did we get in this position, and what will we do about it? There are a lot of people asking lots of questions about cuts. Today we're going to talk about cuts. HB 4 will give us a clear and concise list of those cuts, and probably a lot of testimony about where the discomfort in those cuts will be.